Oh, hello everyone. Yeah, bad start. I've not live streamed for a little while now, and to be honest with you, I've kind of forgotten how it works. Things have changed with YouTube and using OBS Studio since I last streamed. So, if anyone can actually hear me out there, give me a shout or say hello or say anything. Oh, hello Tazo Islam. How you doing? Yeah, like I said, sorry, bit of a rough start. I don't stream too much anymore, and I just thought to myself, let's actually do a live stream. I've not uploaded anything today, so I thought, let's actually talk to people. I would have had thousands of more subscribers coming since I last done one of these, so yes. Sound is fine. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so we got 10 people in this stream, which is pretty good. Not a bad start. Last time I streamed, I was leaving it to what, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. And yeah, it was a bit hard to determine which was the best time because obviously a lot of subscribers are abroad in America, that type of place. So very hard to determine the best time to do live streams. Yeah, I'm doing good, Inferno. That's an old name. I'm pretty sure you was in live streams when I was last doing it. I'm not entirely sure, but definitely your username looks very familiar. Might be someone else, so I'm not sure. So, as usual in live streams, just going to do some retro emulation setups or some advice. So, if anyone out there is struggling with anything that I've covered, let us know and we'll see what we can do for you. Hello, Michael. How you doing? Doing very well. Thank you very much. Awesome. I mean, it's been such a long time since I last done a live stream. I'm pretty sure I didn't even have a microphone back then. So yeah, lots changed since. Awesome. Missed your streams. It's gonna happen once in a blue moon these days. Hello V3, I'm going to just say ventilator. Hello, how are you doing? So, yeah, if you're new to the stream, like I say, and like the title of this stream is going to be, talk about retro emulation. So, is anyone struggling with anything that I've covered? You know, what is it I'm doing on my channel that you like, and what is it you don't like? So, let us know. Let's see. Greets to Mrs. Okay. So this has blown me away, actually. We've got 15 people in now, so yeah, it's been a little while. So what's everyone enjoying? I know arcade ports was pretty popular when I was doing those. Of course, I don't really upload many of those anymore, but that's not to say I'm not going to be going back to those, because I will be going back to those at some point soon. But as many of you are aware, I cover a wide scope of different topics on the channel. So, you know, some people like emulation guides, some like gameplay guides, some new games for retro systems. So, yeah. I think a lot of people has joined the channel presuming that I just cover, say, emulation guides or even just arcade port videos. But for those who know the channel really well, you'll know that I cover so much more and everything in between. Let's see, teknoparrot. Yeah, teknoparrot is pretty awesome. We like that. Every time I mess with my teknoparrot, my PC bugs out with viruses. Okie dokes. Every time teknoparrot, my PC bugs. Okay, so what's the matter with teknoparrot? Says I use Linux. Okay, so if you're using Linux, then to be fair, I don't actually use Linux. And to be honest with you, I wasn't even aware that teknoparrot was even designed for Linux. I just thought it was Windows, or I might have just missing the whole Linux thing, because I don't use it personally. Yeah, every now and again, people's asking me to do Linux guides or emulator guides for Linux operating systems, and I don't have time for Linux. I really don't. The closest on the channel I get to Linux, talking about Linux, is probably Batacera or Commodore OS, which actually reminds me, Commodore OS 3, if you're interested in C64 modern stuff, released a few days ago. And I actually put in my community posts a reminder that Commodore OS Vision 3.0 just rolled out a few days ago. So I put in my community post the guide to set that up on a Windows PC using something called VirtualBox. You should do arcade data setups like latest from Japan Arcade Data. I'm not actually sure what you mean by that, Digital Dev. Nokia Engage, how old school. A bit of a flop that. I did a guide actually a little while back. It was a retrobat Engage setup guide, and just reminded myself, early 2000s, I think it was, the Engage came out, and of course, people didn't know at the time if it was either a portable gaming system or a phone. It was a bit of an odd hybrid to have at the time. Hello, Italy, how are you doing? Steering wheel, so I don't actually own a steering wheel. Something else, which a couple of people ask me, is light guns. Again, I don't have a light gun, so I don't actually have any capability of doing any setup guides for light gun games or steering wheels. To be honest with you, just a controller is fine for me. So yeah. So most of my gaming at the moment is actually on my original hardware. I don't know if anyone's been watching my community posts and even some videos. I'm collecting lots of old systems at the moment, and I'm actually using an upscaler on the modern day TV, which is OSSC. And it's a little box, and what it does, it brings down the speeds to the correct original speed computers and consoles should be running at. And that's the problem with old consoles or even computers. By running them on a modern day TV, the speeds are all over the place and they look really bad. But the OSSC scaler makes them how they should look and play, and it's really awesome stuff. Current project is Xbox via retrobat. Is that the original Xbox? I covered that, probably getting on for a year and a half, 2 years ago. That's a fairly easy setup, I think. So what have I got in my collection at the moment? I've got a lot. I've got my C64, I've got my Amiga 600, I've got my Wii. The other day I literally bought a Mega Drive Mark 1, Model 1 of the Mega Drive. I've got my C64 Maxi. I've got a ZX Spectrum clone. I've got a PS2, PS1, got a PS3, a Wii U, and a Switch, and that's my collection so far. So on Steam Deck, teknoparrot could possibly run. It's not something I've done. I had a Steam Deck a little while back. Actually bought one because at the time a lot of people was asking for Steam Deck guides, only to upload some guides for Steam Deck, and I didn't get many views. So yeah, didn't go too well. But to knowledge, with Steam Deck, if you manage to get Windows on it, you can of course run retrobat, and retrobat supports teknoparrot. So I think there's a 50-50 chance of Steam Deck supporting teknoparrot, providing you can get Windows running on it for retrobat. Thanks. Actually, my video camera's mounted into my laptop, and it's a real shame. Let's see if I can actually take you around to see my collection. Hold on. So I've got to make sure this microphone doesn't come out. So if you can see it, that's my collection so far. And on the other side, like I say, I'm not sure if you can actually see this. It's hard to judge where the camera is in. This is slightly out of sync as well, so what I'm doing right now is slightly behind. Favourite system? Well, because of nostalgia, I would say Commodore 64, without a doubt. And I'm not sure if you've seen the videos on it, but my C64 is the dog's bollocks. It's got, in fact, I'll show you the C64. If I just turn it on, hopefully you'll see this. Like I say, okay, so the C64 isn't plugged in. You can see down here, I've got a hell of a lot of plugs for everything. So if I pop in my C64, okay, so unplug the Mega Drive. And yeah, believe it or not, I actually tidied up these cables a while back in there, getting in the right state again. Okay, so, that would be the reason, because my C64 doesn't have the power inside of it. Okay, yeah, spaghetti cables everywhere, just terrible. Oh, absolute nightmare. Okay, so anyone that's familiar with Commodore, Amiga and C64 plugs and even the cables for power, they look very similar, same sort of colour. Okie doke, so I found a C64 plug, now that everyone's lost interest. Okay, this is my Commodore 64, so I'm not sure. Better bring the microphone with me. So yeah, this is the Commodore 64, if you can see it. So this is a custom case my partner bought for me about a year ago. I put LED lights in with it, and I've got an Ultimate cartridge, which is the 2+L, I think it is, in the back of it. So yeah, very cool stuff. So, yeah, going back to the question, nostalgia tells me Commodore 64 is my favourite system, but I think nowadays I'm probably more of an Amiga fan. Probably, I'm not sure. And that could be because through the years I've kind of done my head in with C64 stuff. I'm not sure. But PS3, absolutely, that was my favourite PlayStation console, without a doubt. I love the PS3, and probably PS3 had some of the best exclusives on there. And I think from the PS4 to PS5, obviously now, I think games are they're not as good as what they once was during that PS3 era. I worked at Blockbuster at the time, and I was kind of getting the first place on a lot of exclusives for the PS3 at the time, and of course the 360, and the Wii was in the background. And yeah, really, some PS3 games, they were just awesome. And I don't think anything's really beat that library since, but that's just me. Oh, you had a Neo Geo CD console. You must have been a very rich person back then. I didn't actually know anyone in the 90s had a Neo Geo. Also the 3DO. In fact, I'd never even heard of the 3DO in the 90s. And I didn't discover that until, 15, 16 years ago. But just like Neo Geo, I love the 3DO is equal. I think the 3DO is a really underrated system. So, yeah, that was a big selling point, obviously, of the PlayStation 3 in its day. Of course, it also had HDMI, which was PlayStation's first visit into the HDMI HD world. And, yeah, absolutely, Blu-ray was up and coming kind of at the time. It was a no-brainer. It was a bit like how PlayStation 2 incorporated DVD. And of course, the original Xbox could play DVDs, but you'd have to buy a dongle and a remote control, whereas the PS2 did it without needing a remote and dongle. So I think it's quite inevitable that Sony are sort of known for sort of not consoles so much, but known for filming music, that type of thing. Hello, how you doing, Get Your Finger? So yeah, the C64. It was my first computer, my first system. That was, I think it was Christmas 1990. I had the Play 4 Intelligence Pack. There's a 4 game cartridge in there, which was Flimbo's Quest, which, yeah, I've got a tattoo of Flimbo actually on my arm. Okay, with Clax, International Soccer, and Fiendish Freddy. And then after that, I'm pretty sure I moved on to the Nintendo NES by around 92, 93. Then I moved on to Master System. Then I'm pretty sure I went on to a Super Nintendo. But yeah, generally through the 90s, it was mainly dominated with consoles. In today, I'm more of a, well, for a number of years now, I'm more of a microcomputer type. So that 8-bit, 16-bit, 68K computer type thing. Bit of a geek, really. So 1P1, no worries at all. That's what the channel's here for. I enjoy uploading guides, and I know people like watching the guides too. Um, for probably a solid year and a half, I was literally just uploading tutorials, and there comes a point where there's nothing else to cover, and that was the case. So I moved on to doing different things with the channel. And of course, everything's all retro linked, retro related one way or another. But uh, yeah, as you can see on my desktop right now, retro gaming emulation guides and retro gameplay videos. So I kind of cover everything, and there's a broad scope there, ranging from the Sinclair ZX81 up until the Switch. And of course, I've covered the Switch recently because the Switch, it might not be retro, but it certainly has a hell of a lot of decent retro-inspired games on it. So in 1983, I was actually born in 1983, and of course the Breadsbin model came out in 82. So yeah, by the time I got my C64, which was the C64C, the second model with the different SID chip in it, I suppose at that point in 1990, that was dated technology, but I loved it at the time. And yeah, I think your first system holds a lot of nostalgia for you, especially the music with the C64. Nothing around during that era and to date in the 8-bit world actually rivaled the SID chip, what the 64 had. And, you know, the SID chip wasn't actually a finalized chip at the time. The designers behind the SID chip wanted to improve it even further. So, technically, when that released in 1982, it could have been a lot better than what it actually was, which is pretty interesting. Uh, you know, I think a lot of musicians throughout the 80s in synth pop music and electro music was actually incorporating C64 sounds into their songs as a synthesizer. That's how good it was at the time. Daily videos soon become my daily routine. Either on the way to work or back. Well, it's yeah. Well, carry on. I don't mind. Obviously, my videos are to be enjoyed and watched by everyone. Retrobat changed my life. All these consoles and all PCs made me addicted. Yeah, yeah. There are some really awesome old systems out there, and I think the trouble is with a lot of retro gaming channels, they'll focus on something which is a no-brainer to so-called retro gaming, which is of course Nintendo or Sega. But I like to do a bit more European and go for all these weird computers of the 80s and 90s as well. A little while back, I was talking about the Archimedes computer by Acorn, and at the time, people was taking the piss out of me because I couldn't pronounce it properly. But anyways, I think your average retro gaming channel don't even mention all sort of failed, I suppose, systems like that is often. FPGA is very awesome, but personally, I do prefer my original hardware, without a doubt. You know, it's all about the tactile thing with original computers. You know, of course, emulation, it's quicker and all that, but there's something about the original hardware which emulation can't do. And of course, you can load up emulators on a modern day computer, but the whole look, the whole experience, it's not there at all. You traded your Specky plus two. Is that the grey Spectrum or the black one? Because there's two versions of the plus two, and that was during the times when Alan Sugar bought out Sinclair. Bit of an odd era that, because at the time you had the Amstrad CBC range, but you also had the Spectrum still coming out. It was a very odd time. Yeah, I'm actually originally from the south of England, but these days I reside in the northeast of England. So a lot of people get confused because I don't sound like a northerner. I obviously sound a bit like a farmer, which is your stereotype of southern south people from the southwest west of England. So yeah, if you're not inside of England, we got probably over 41, 42 different regional accents. We got a hell of a lot of accents for a tiny little place, which is England. So I'm always going to say this, but what I've done is just added my PayPal account. If anyone wants to help the channel, please donate. I'm always grateful, really grateful. And it helps the channel improve things such as steering wheels, light guns, that type of thing. So those type of guides you want, it won't be possible without some funding, at least some donations. Like I said, I'm always really grateful for anything donated, and yeah, gives me a little boost as well. So there you go. If anyone wants to donate, had you down at Somerset with a Runcorn. Runcorn, I think that isn't that on the way to Cornwall Way. I know that name from somewhere, and of course, Somerset is next to Bristol Way. Technically, I'm from South Gloucestershire, but I say Bristol because most people they know where Bristol is. As a kid, South Gloucestershire was actually known as Avon, and over time it then got changed to South Gloucestershire, blah blah blah. But yeah, Bristolian really, I suppose. If I say to people I'm from South Gloucestershire, it's a bit of a mouthful as well. Okay, so do we need any help, people? Is there anything anyone's struggling with? That's why I'm here, and this is why we're talking retro emulation tonight. Cheshire. Oh, Liverpool. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually going to Liverpool. We're getting married in September. Me and my partner's getting married, and we're actually going to Liverpool for the honeymoon. We could have went anywhere, and we chose Liverpool because, well, I'm a Beatles fan. I was brought up with the Beatles, and my partner loves, well, getting to love the Beatles. So yeah, we're going actually staying in a Beatles hotel, quite a fancy place in Liverpool, obviously. Tommy 3D binocular toys. I'm not sure actually, but I do remember those big plastic things. Yeah, I remember those fairly well. But I mean, that might border on the LCD emulation, LCD game emulation, like Grand Slam games, that type of thing. Thanks, Digital Dev. No worries, Inferno. But yeah, thanks for the congratulations, YNWA. So yeah, Tommy 3D binocular toys. Don't think I had one, but I remember they had red plastic on with the eyepieces, which yeah, literally looked like binoculars. Funny times, very experimental times with kids' technology. I mean, if we look back at those times in the 80s and even early 90s, mid 90s, some of that stuff what kids would play with back then was very patronising in comparison to what kids are messing around with today. No, like I said, it's not actually something I've ever even considered of being emulated. So I really couldn't tell you. But having said that, you got LCD emulation. I know that. For example, the Nintendo Game and Watch games you can emulate in plenty of those LCD games, which you would find in shops in Britain, such as Rumbelows in the day. And if you're outside of Britain or England, Rumbelows was kind of like a hardware type place, fridges and freezers and things. And yeah, I remember buying some Super Nintendo games in Rumbelows in the mid-90s. And Rumbelows, they closed, I think, come the late 90s. What an Under Edge. What an Under Edge. Yeah, I know that name. I know it's down south, and well, it's kind of relatively close to Bristol way. Can't think off the top of my head. Is that, what an Under Edge is that? Can't get my bearings on. Is that anywhere near Frenchay area? It probably isn't, but yeah. Updating retrobat. So, one thing about updating retrobat is thanks for your donation, Keaton Carr. That's really kind of you. Nice one. So updating retrobat. Let me just remind you, if anyone uses retrobat and you want to update it, just please, for the love of God, save your configuration files. People have been known to update it even with my warnings, and then they complain that things aren't working, blah blah blah, you know, that type of thing. So Switch 2 emulator. I don't know. I've not actually come across anything about Switch 2 emulation. By the seams of it, I think America is going to have a job having a Nintendo Switch because of tariffs at the moment, which of course presidency is putting tariffs on, well, everyone pretty much. But I won't go into that. But yeah, Switch 2 emulation is like, yeah, I'd say, you know, come on, let's see. Switch emulation is perfect. And it didn't take very long to get a perfect emulator. You know, they are pretty good. So, I don't know what to see about Switch 2 for sure. Okay. Amstrad emulator. Yeah, I've actually covered Amstrad on the channel in the early days. Actually, what did I do? I did an emulator called Caprice 32, and I did a emulator guide for, oh, I can't remember, but yeah, I've actually done Amstrad guides in the past. Zemu not working on my PC, so yeah, or Zemu actually uploaded the guide for that the other day. Now I know some people has issues getting that to run, so it's very specific in how I put that guide together. So obviously you need to remember to eject the games and load the games. It's a bit fussy that way. Okay. Again, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think you were there earlier on, Fernando, when I was saying I barely run Linux. The closest I get to it is Batacera and Commodore OS, and that's probably about it. I understand what Linux is. I was actually talking to my son about Linux the other day. He's experimenting with Linux, so I put Linux Mint onto a USB stick and gave the USB stick to him when I seen him a couple of weeks ago back in Bristol. Very easy, literally just a case of putting a USB stick, booting it up through BIOS and then installing it to your hard drive. But really, for what I use computers for, Windows is used by 71% of people on planet Earth, and Windows is just easier to find applications, that type of thing. Yeah, the X68000 digital def, absolutely awesome machine. Now, I compares that with Japan's equivalent of the Amiga, and at the time people say, what are you talking about? But I'm not the only one to say that, and of course it's a very superior machine, and a lot of developers, Capcom was using the Sharp X68000, develop a lot of the CPS-1 games in the arcades back in the day, so awesome, wonderful machine. Yeah, you know what? MotorStorm, actually, Pacific Rift was the game which totally saw me to the PS3 back in the day. I loved that game. It looked amazing at the time. and it was such an addictive game. But yeah, agreed, there hasn't been a new MotorStorm game for a long time. PS4 didn't get one, PS5 hasn't had one, and the last official MotorStorm game was Apocalypse, and it was okay, but I think Pacific Rift was probably the best, in my opinion. It just looks so nice. I don't look old enough to have a kid. Well, that's very kind of you. I'm actually 41. So I'm not entirely old, not very old, but let's just say I'm halfway through life more than likely. So middle-aged. But actually, I've got two kids. I won't go into it, but over the last 6 years, they've had a severe, 6 years of being gaslit. Like I say, I won't go into it, but let's just say, to cut a long story short, they've been lied about me. They've been manipulated. The mother's lied to a hell of a lot of professionals over time, turned people against me, turned my own kids against me and my partner and my own parents. But like I said, I won't get into that. One of my kids know the story, and I hope he does actually. He's old enough now. And like I said, I won't go into that because it's not really what this channel is about. But yeah, I've got two kids. Okay, so is it the first MotorStorm? Because I know that, I think it was Pacific Rift, which does need to be adjusted. In fact, let me show you a little tip. Um, what I do with PS3 emulation to find something out, if a game works, check this out. If I type into Google RPCS3 MotorStorm, you're going to find a wiki for RPCS3. Now, what these wikis are going to do is give you particular settings. So, the original MotorStorm game is going to tell you here how to actually set this up through RPCS3. So, for example, on this one, we need to enable right color buffers, and this fixes over bright image and other settings. Now, if I was to type into, say, Google MotorStorm Pacific Rift, guaranteed wiki is going to be at the top for RPCS3. We go into that, and here we go. So some PS3 games through RPCS3 are going to need very specific settings, and you can actually set these settings per game in the emulator itself rather than setting up as a whole for everything. Digital. It's one of those things, and again, very briefly, I hate to say it, but I think unless you've actually been through the process of family court, dealt with Kafka social services, and all these other so-called children's services, which are meant to benefit you or your children and put their interests in first place, they're not there for children, yeah, and the system lies, and it lies. But like I say, I won't go into that, but 6 years on, I've not seen my daughter once in 6 years, and my son, I've recently seen him about 2 or 3 weeks back, and that was the third time I've seen him in 6 years. So, one of those things, and like I say, anyone that's ever dealt with family court, then you know the story. It's a load of bollocks, and yeah. Don't matter what evidence you got, the family court will naturally side with the arsehole who's manipulating the system. That's the way it is. Not my rules, that is the way it is. Yeah, so the Wii Homebrew channel, I actually read about that the other day, and it was taken off line apparently. I think something to do with source code or something being stolen. My parents neglected me as a child. They got me an Amstrad. I'm not going to say anything funny about Amstrad because I got a few Amstrad people on this channel, and I don't know. I sometimes take the piss out of the Amstrad fans because they seem to whinge if I say Amstrad ports of arcade games are particularly bad. So yeah, I'm not going to go into that too much. I truly love the Amstrad CPC, the 464, the 6128. I love them. I love them dearly. My daily job is doing what I do. Doing what I do here. That's what I do. If that's what you want to call a job, I'm not sure, but... I don't have children, but I've been bullied online by anonymous trolls for a few years now. Trolls are trolls on the internet, and the way I personally look at trolls on the internet is that they haven't got the balls to do it in real life. So what they do, they turn into keyboard warriors, and they become something they can't do outside of the internet because they're so pathetic, and they use the internet as a shield. That's all there is to it. Yeah, so Amstrads back in the day, I don't even think that the 464s were particularly cheap, and I think that's why a lot of kids in the 80s ended up with a green screen monitor with their CPC. They weren't that cheap. You know, I mean, we can go back now and look at 1982 and the ZX Spectrum 48K, I think, releasing at £120 in the UK. And yeah, it sounds cheap by today's standards, but if you put inflation over that, 100 in, say, £20 in 1982 would likely be the equivalent today of £400-500. So was it really that cheap at the time? And of course, early 80s, it was dominated with microcomputers. Some really strange copycats coming out to catch up with Sinclair's profit and everything he was making with Sinclair Research. So you had the Welsh Dragon 32 and 64 computers coming out, which flopped. You also had the Auric 1, which I think came from Cambridge as well as Sinclair. I'm not sure about that one. Loads coming out. And of course, you had the more premium C64, which by 1982, I'm pretty sure that one was today's equivalent of around £1,100 to £1,200 for a stock bread bin model. Yeah, you know what, P. Ferreira, I think that's how you pronounce your name. Trolls, they tried that crap on with me in the past on this channel. Well, actually, I won't say they, it was just one single person. Claimed actually on social media that I was using AI. It's like, dude, I don't agree with AI. I hate AI. I don't like AI. But I soon put that one to bed and made a fool out of this person. It's like, seriously? You know me that well? So, yeah, just to remember, if trolls bully you, all that type of thing, I just shouldn't really say, man. You just see them for what they are. They're just idiots. And they're not man enough or woman enough to do it in the real world. So they like to be on their little computer screen and do that crap. And no one likes a keyboard warrior. Absolutely nobody. Grell game. Keaton, it's retro, but got my Grell game. What do you mean by that? Okay, I'm going to say it again, but if anyone wants to donate to the channel, just say thanks and support the channel. I've just dropped my PayPal address, which will take you straight to the Just Jamie PayPal, obviously. Any donations are always welcome, and I'm always really grateful for those. GP, any recommendations? Okay, so you know what? It's actually, I don't know how many of you's in Britain, obviously, but tonight in the northeast of England, it's actually surprisingly warm. Like, really warm. I was upstairs earlier on putting some drawers together, a chest of drawers, and it's just so hot up in the attic. Okie dokes. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go outside on the balcony, and I'm going to have a cigarette. So, let's put the light on the camera. Okie dokes. Norway. I've always wanted to go to Norway, and that's not because of Norwegian Wood by the Beatles. Norway is just known for snow. Also, black metal was infamous in Norway, I believe, in the 90s at some point. Okie dokes, let's take this outside. Ooh. Anyone hear me? Okie dokes, if you just joined the stream, I sincerely apologise for the mess going on just here, but I had problems earlier on with my microphone, and it looks like I've managed to get that back up. If we take a look at the volume just here in OBS, we can see, in fact, this is now working, which is very good. I had to actually take away the live streamer on, or go offline, as it were. So, let's take a look. Okie dokes, cool. So, yeah, if you're watching right now, let me just remind you that I don't use live streaming much anymore. Hello again, Tazo. How you doing? I think that's how you pronounce it. So yeah, you was there earlier on, and yeah, if you followed me right to the end of that stream, you'll know my microphone went, and I've literally just had issues getting it working again, but it seems to be working okay for now. Awesome. So, yeah, I'm going to just continue from where I left off earlier on, really. So, just waiting for a few more people to join in. Cool, okie dokes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just add a community post and see if anyone else wants to join in on the stream. So, let's just type in live now. Cool, okie dokes. Okay, so just like earlier on, if you wasn't in the stream earlier on, then I'll say again, the live stream's obviously as it's titled, so we're talking retro emulation and really finding out what everyone's struggling with, if anybody here watching this stream is struggling with running anything that I've covered on the channel. So normally it's to do with retrobat. And if you've been following the channel for the last couple of years, you might have heard me on and off say I'm sick to death of retrobat. And if you see my playlist for retrobat that I've covered, you'll likely understand why I'm sick of retrobat, because I've done it to death. Probably 150, maybe 200 separate guides for retrobat I've done in the past. And one would like a break from it. But that's not to say I don't want to talk about it, because of course I do tutorials and I'm happy to help, really. Retrobat is a no-brainer to me. That's not to sound big-headed, but I've been doing it for so long I pretty much know retrobat inside out at this point, and that's why I don't upload too much of it anymore, because I like a new challenge. And that's why in the past I've done a bit more hardcore front-end tutorials from attract mode in retrofe and so forth. So yeah, if you've not seen those tutorials or those more in-depth front ends, then check those out there in the playlists. Okie dokes. Hi Ryan, how's it going? And we got T-said Joet. Hello, Rascast. Is this live? Yes, it is. I've not spoken to you for a long time. I remember probably going back 5 or 6 months ago, Rascast, you was a regular in the live streams. We also got Ramos Outdoors. Hello, how are you? Oh, it's good to have such a nice welcome. So, yeah, I was doing a live stream earlier on for those of you who wasn't in that stream at the time, and my sound went. So, yeah, I couldn't get it working, so I just closed down the stream. But here we go again, it's working. Does anyone else agree that Phoenix is the best emulator 3DO? You know what, Ryan? I'm a big 3DO geek myself. It's such an underrated platform, and it's one of my favourites. There's a particular game on it, Phoenix. Can't think what it's called. Phoenix 3? It's a platformer that's using that stock. Can't get my words out. Photographic animation. What are they called? For sprites. It's that time of the day now, I'm wearing out a little bit. But yeah, 3DO, Phoenix, I think apparently it's meant to be one of the best emulators. I don't think 3DO emulation is as bad as what it once was, just like N64 emulation, probably going back 20 years ago. Yeah, around 2005, 2006, N64 emulation was barely playable. And then today, obviously, N64 is not bad. It could be better, but things are being worked on. Booted my C64 up after 15 years, and it still works. That's because machines back in those days were built to last, unlike what we get today. Lots of hardware and a tiny little bit of plastic is likely going to break down. No sound? Hello? Okay, so Tazo Islam say no sound. Is that in there's no sounds coming out from me right now? Okay, so you've got the Pi 02W for emulation. That's a very it's a very cheap version of Raspberry Pi, the Zero model. So yeah, I think those are pretty good for probably 8-bit systems to emulate. But things like Pi Zero are pretty good when you're putting up to computers such as the Amiga, there's real hardware out there, such as your vintage computers. And there's been some projects on particular systems which actually utilizes Raspberry Pi. For example, my Amiga 600, I've got something called a Pi Storm inside of it, and that's a little expansion which sits onto the CPU on the Amiga's motherboard, and on top of that sits a Raspberry Pi, and what it does is makes the CPU believe that it's a much stronger CPU. So yeah, that's Pi Storm, and if anyone knows much about Amigas, then Amiga 600 games are pretty basic, but with Pi Storm, it can allow for a lot higher end games to be played on it using a Pi Storm. It also gives it RTG mode, which you can pretty much play Doom, Quake, Hexen, those type of games on. Even an Amiga 500, really impressive stuff. Decided to go with my Ryzen 5 5500 tower instead. Yeah, you know what? My son, he likes the idea of Ryzen. That's AMD. Me, I've always been an Intel thing, and I kind of look at CPUs these days like Intel versus AMD, and it's almost a lot like PlayStation versus Xbox, and I think you're either in one club or the other. So, yeah, going back to Amiga, if anyone's an Amiga fan, you've not heard of Pi Storm, it's an awesome expansion. And the Pi Storm, there's a few different designs of it for the software to run on a few different Amiga models. Very awesome stuff. Hello, Sir Lamalot. I read your name then, actually, is Lamasoft, and yeah, going back to old school 8-bit computers, Lamasoft. Uh, yeah. So, yeah, if you're new to the chat, let us hear your troubles with your emulation. If you've got any troubles, and let's get that brain of mine working. It doesn't work too often anymore, so I'm getting old. RTX 3070 GPU for just about anything. You know what? My laptop, it's got an RTX built into it, and it is an i7 11th generation. I bought this one around a few years ago, and to be fair, to date, it pretty much handles many things. And a lot of games are using DLSS technology today, so yeah, it's not like old school PC gaming, I don't think, anymore. There's little tweaks you can add on to make more modern games run on hardware, which is at this point a few years old. Yeah, Jeff Minter, that's the Lamasoft thing I was going on about just a minute ago. Actually, I was in Bristol, my hometown, a few weeks ago, and I bumped into a coder. I can't think for the life of me what his name was, but I put a picture of us on my Facebook page, and I also did it on the community posts as well on the channel, and can't think for the life of me. Richard something. Anyways, he approached me in Bristol, and I had a Sinclair ZX Spectrum t-shirt on at the time, and he comes up to me, and yeah, he thought I was just an average, just like I bought it from Primark or, some sort of generic clothes shop like that. Anyways, I was talking to him for a little while about old times like 8-bit computers, 16-bit, so on. And it turns out that he actually did a lot of work around the computer industry in 8-bit and even 16-bit and 32-bit days. He actually coded the music on a lot of popular games, and he went as far as going coding the music for, it was Jungle Strike, the Mega Drive version, and he also did some work around the PlayStation game Actual Soccer. I can't think for the life of me what his name was, but Yeah, it's really interesting. That particular day, he was just around Bristol. He was doing the sound engineering on the early 80s punk group, the Vapors, turning Japanese. And yeah, proper old school bloke. And yeah, we was nattering on for a long time. So yeah, Jeff Minter. Yeah, I've seen pictures on different Spectrum groups on Facebook of Jeff meeting people at these conventions. I've not personally met him, but he seems sound enough. In obviously, I think some of his games in the 80s was quite questionable, very acid trippy bizarreness. Super furry animals. That's interesting analogy. Oh God, Christ! What was his name? Steve Richardson. You know what? I'm gonna Google the name a minute. I'm sure it was Steve Richardson. And he actually lives in Sheffield, which is just up the road from me. No, I can't find his name anywhere. So if I put in Jungle Strike, Mega Drive. Coders behind it, and I'm pretty sure he did some work on some Amstrad games too. Nah, just my luck. I can't find it anywhere. I can't find his name anywhere, but never mind. Had a debate with Jeff Minter. Well, preferred programming on the STA or the Amiga. I don't know, somewhat crosses my mind with Jeff Minter that he was an Atari fan. And I say that because wasn't he behind Tempest? And there was a Tempest game on the Atari Jaguar as well. Yeah, the CPC 464 was our first family computer. Did you get that with a green screen monitor, the monochrome monitor, or did you have it with the color monitor? Obviously, I suppose most kids back in the day wanted a color monitor, but of course back then a color monitor would have cost a fortune. Yeah, I've played the Atari Jaguar Tempest game on and off over the years, and I remember just a few months ago, actually, I really got into that game, and I must have been sat down playing it for around half an hour. Yeah, you got the color monitor, awesome. Yeah. Now, yeah, so just you had it good. Personally, back in the day, I always had a color screen. It wasn't a monitor. I had a Ferguson portable TV, and it was colored TV. But I had a Commodore 64, and at that point, yeah, a TV screen, portable screen was just fine. And looking at the prices of monitors for Commodore computers back in the early 90s were just astronomical. So I think that was about a question, not going to happen. So yeah, I stuck with the Ferguson TV, and it served me well. Commodore PET. You know what? I've actually owned a ridiculous amount of computers in my time. Early 90s, I was going to car boot sales most Sundays with my dad, and picking up loads of retro computers, or just computers, with my dad. Of course, the 80s had just gone. The consoles was just kicking in the early 90s. Mega Drive, NES, and all that. And people wanted to get rid of their computers from the 80s just for next to nothing. So I used to buy all sorts. But the Commodore PET is one I never actually had. Commodore PET, I think, I could be wrong, but I think the first PET started going into offices around 1977. And I knew there's a few models, but yeah, I know roughly the size of those machines as well, and they are huge. Amstrad CPC, I'm not sure if you know, Andrew, but you probably do know. There's a massive community, a scene for it today, and there has been for years. You can buy USB adapters to go into the expansion ports in the back to load your games on. C64 used carts. Yeah, the good thing about those Commodore 64s, the Commodore 64, is that you could play games in various ways. Obviously, you had cassette tapes, which in Europe was common practice. Everything I had at the time in the early 90s was on cassette tape, whereas America, predominantly you had floppy disks. But yeah, around Europe, it was pretty much cassette tapes, or at least in Britain, that was. 14-inch color TV with my CBC, old 1972. Awesome. Got one of the coolest devices made by Amdernick, which is... Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about the Amdernick portable systems. I've never actually owned one. But yeah, I know there's a lot of models of Amdernick in the last few years. Figured out the games for it. So yeah, you know, 8-bit computer games. I think European computer games from the 80s and 90s are laughed at because of their quirkiness and bizarreness. And I think if you was into it, you was into it. To be fair, when I was a kid in the early 90s, I only really knew about 2 or 3 other people who actually had microcomputers back then. Someone my mum used to work with, her son at Amstrad CPC, and a couple of other kids I knew at school at the time also had C64s, but the majority had consoles at the time. Spectrum plus 2A. Yeah, you know what, I'm not sure, Carlos, if you've seen my video on it, but I uploaded a video on my ZX Spectrum clone a little while back. It's a Zysif 512 motherboards, and like say it's a clone of a ZX Spectrum, but I got a new transparent case for it. I put a new membrane on it and a keypad, and oh yeah, very nice. And to be honest, I need to invest more time into that machine. But yeah, I got a real soft spot for the Spectrum. And of course, it's when Britain was booming in the computer industry, pioneers of the field as such. Totally stones, man. Well, have a good time, man. Tape deck, data set. Yeah, like I say, I can't really comment on Amdernick. All I know is that they've always had a fairly good name from what I've read over, yeah, the space of the last 4 or 5 years. The closest I got to portable emulation was when I had a Steam Deck. But to be fair, I didn't really use it too often, so I just thought I may as well get rid of this and just start investing in buying some proper real hardware, and that's what I've been doing since I've been slowly collecting, rebuilding my computer collection, and yeah, I've got quite a lot at the moment. So you had the Texas Instruments 99. You know what? For some of the games, early TI-9 games, they weren't bad. I've actually played a few Texas Instrument games during my arcade ports, and I was actually surprised at the quality of some of them. I think, likely, Texas Instrument computers likely did better in the States at the time. You know, if we look back on British computing history, I wouldn't say nobody had a Texas Instruments computer, but I think the majority in the 80s either had a Spectrum or a C64 or even the Amstrad. I think those 3 computers in particular were the 3 main ones here in Britain. And of course, you also had the BBC Microbit Acorn, and you had a few other little companies which kind of came and went. Auric, for example, which didn't last too long in this country. Tangerine, Auric Computers, that was one of their manufacturing companies. One of their manufacturer buildings for the Auric Computers. Caught on fire. I actually did a documentary on it a couple of years ago. Anyways, in the end, the Auric computer found its home in France, and you had a couple of extra Auric computers, which was more popular in France at the time. Yeah, so the Mugen and open board games, they were pretty fun. I've covered some content in the past on both of those systems. Mortal Kombat. Everyone likes a bit of Mortal Kombat. I think the C64 was a very good thing to have in 1984. Personally, for me, C64, in my opinion, started coming into its own around 86, 87. As much as I love C64, I'm just not too keen on those very early games. They're a little bit too basic for my personal taste. Freddy and Jason. Awesome. So, you know what? I'm a big horror fan. 80s horror, that is. And let's face it, like most decent horror franchises came from the 80s. And Freddy and Jason was pretty much both of those. Talking about Freddy and Jason in Mortal Kombat, I did a video a little while back and I can't think for the life of me what the name of the game was. Where is it? No, I must have deleted it. It was like a fan-made game where you could actually play as one of several different horror characters, from Chucky to Jason to, I'm pretty sure, yeah, Ash from the Evil Dead was a character. Loads of those iconic characters. I can't think for the life of me what the name of the fighting game was, but it was awesome. Monkey. Okie dokes. So that's not a good thing. My phone has just died and I dearly need it right now for something. No. So where is everyone? I'm taking it this time of night. I've probably got more people in America right now, but I could be wrong. Yeah, Rob Hubbard, he did some awesome tunes with the Sid. Yeah, something like that, Sir Lamlot. Yeah, Rob Hubbard. Rob Hubbard, I'm pretty sure he did the tune to Green Beret. There are so many different composers, famous composers of the 80s. But yeah, Rob Hubbard was up there as one of the best. I'm from the Shire. You don't mean Shire Hampton, do you? In Bristol. Wow, Zap 64, awesome. You know, when I was a kid, it was Commodore format. Zap 64, I'm pretty sure was still a thing around 1990 to, what, 1993, 1994? Possibly, or I could be wrong. But, yeah, Commodore format, okay. Devonshire, oh, I see what you mean. There's actually a place in Bristol called Shire Hampton, and when I see that, I don't think of Lord of the Rings. I actually think of Sharhampton in Bristol. Southwest, yes, so, yeah, Devon. Oh, sir, Devon. Weymouth is Weymouth in Devon? I don't think it is. I could be wrong. I probably am wrong. But, yeah, Devon's just down the road from where I grew up, where I was born in Bristol. Probably way off, actually, there, or Weymouth. Terradrome, that's the one. Yeah, it's an awesome game. If anyone here is into fighting games, seriously, check out Terradrome. It's awesome. Dorset, that's the one, yeah. Yeah, Weymouth, I love Weymouth. I've not been there for, what, probably 7 or 8 years now. Last time I went to Weymouth, I took my kids on holiday there, and they absolutely loved it at the time. Went out on the pedalo, but, yeah, Weymouth, I spent a lot of my childhood going to Weymouth. Portugal, really, Spectrum was huge in Portugal. I know certain parts of Europe are popular for particular systems. Yeah, cool. Been to Bristol a fair few times. A few of my mates moved there recently for the music scene. Yeah, Bristol was known, well, is still known for trip hop. So you got all groups like, pretty sure Portishead is classed as trip hop. Rob Hubbard, Martin Galway. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Martin Galway was the Green Beret bloke. Matt Gray, yeah. So yeah, I was actually in Bristol a few weeks ago, and it, I think the problem I've got with Bristol these days, really, is that it's just too busy. It really is, and it's known as kind of like the second London, and certainly to live in Bristol these days, if you can afford to live in Bristol when you're not on benefits, which yeah, I think if you can actually afford to live in a big city down south of England, such as Bristol, fair play to you. Must be earning a lot of money because it's not cheap in places like that anymore. 3D Mortal Kombat. 3D Mortal Kombat. I didn't know there was a 3D Mortal Kombat. Hello, Ice Crush. How you doing? You know what? Here's me chatting away because that's what I do when I'm doing live streams. I go on and on and on and on. And I do my own heading, to be fair. Anyways, I was looking for a charger for my phone. It's died, and damn it. Isn't that annoying? And my partner, wife-to-be, is gone upstairs with the charger. That's wonderful. You know what? I'll say one thing about Bristol. I'll say is that I'm grateful. I seen it years ago how Bristol used to be. Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of Bristol these days. If I'm fair, like I said, too busy. I'm actually originally from South Gloucestershire. Would just say Bristol, but for the last 6 years, I've been living in the northeast of England. Near Middlesbrough, we'll say. So yeah, northeast of England, and it's quieter up north in certain places, and certainly where I live, it's pretty chilled out. I live right next to the coast, and there's a beach nearby, and yeah, it's not bad up here. But like I was saying, certainly at the age of going clubbing and everything else, I'm really happy that I experienced all that in Bristol. And the reason I'm not too keen on Bristol these days is because most places which were awesome for, say, heavy metal music, which I used to go to back in the day, they closed down years ago, not to be replaced by anything to take their places. And nowadays, it seems like nightclubs in general are beginning to shut down. Of course, it's different times today, and I think that's really sad. I've been to Leeds. Yeah, so Leeds is, let's see, north, south, west. I'm pretty sure Leeds is West Yorkshire. Yorkshire is obviously the biggest place in England. Yorkshire is huge, and yeah, I actually stopped off in Leeds whenever I go back to Bristol, so the stops it makes. Yeah, you know what? The coast, it's not too bad, but if you're new to move to near the sea, then I found myself particularly tired. Of course, it's the salt air and it knocks you right out. I live in crappy Birmingham. Now, you don't need to say crappy. We all know there's a bin problem in Birmingham at the moment. But that's not Birmingham's fault, and that's certainly likely not your fault. That's politicians' fault. And politicians are no good for anybody. Power to the people, man. Yeah, I've seen all the reports on. I won't say I watch the mainstream media because I don't. I got more logic than to follow propaganda, which is hosted by BBC nowadays. So I watch proper news, and yeah, it's pretty severe in Birmingham. In fact, the last thing I heard about Birmingham was the army was actually gonna be deployed to Birmingham to clean up rubbish, literally. Don't know if the mainstream media reported on that, but I just couldn't believe what I heard at the time. Really? You've trained to become a soldier. You want to go to war because that, let's face it, that's why you're a soldier. You know, you're being prepared to a war in the war zone. To be told you're gonna go and clean up some rubbish, yeah. So Kansas City. In the mains, yeah. Like I say, I think my faith in BBC News in particular went several years ago. It's a question of the BBC being notorious for trying to hide child abusers. And I won't say anything else along those lines, but anyone that knows about the BBC and the type of people they employ and everything like that, and how they're linked to politicians, it's like, yeah, it's nothing more than propaganda. Missouri. Yeah, open bore is awesome. So hopefully, other parts of England won't go on bin strike. I can understand entirely why bin workers in Birmingham's gone on strike. I mean, if I had a hell of a lot of money cut from my wage, I wouldn't be very impressed with that. So I don't blame them at all. And I don't think many people do blame them. At the end of the day, they shouldn't have had their wages cut. And, you know, it just goes to show with a bin strike going on how important that service actually is. And they should be rewarded rather than dewarded. I think politics and politicians, it's a very dangerous time we live in with politics. I won't go into politics too much because it's not really my place and I've got a hell of a lot to say. And of course, with politics, I think you've got to be very thick-skinned in the first place to be talking about politics on social media. Too many people was offended today. Blah, blah, blah. Everyone's a racist. Everyone's a sexist. Everyone's a xenophobe. Everyone's a this. Everyone's a that. If you don't agree with someone else's point of view, that's what you're deemed as. So, really, on something like YouTube, I really don't have time to be talking politics because it's very personal. And although a lot of people aren't too personal with it today, as you can see on things like Facebook, they'll just tell the world what they believe. It's dangerous talking about politics, I think, today. Yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on in the world, and I sometimes think, is it because I'm older now and I'm more focused on politics, which I am. To be fair, I've been into politics for years and years and years. It's nothing new, but I think today in particular, there's a hell of a lot going on around the world. Of course, you've got Russia and Ukraine. You've got problems in America with tariffs and that type of thing. You've got problems with Iran, with India. Even in England, for sure, without a doubt, there's problems in England, big problems at the moment. So the world has gone mental, quite literally, by the seams of it. And I think what these politicians need to do is sit back and play some C64. And I think that will take them back to a happier place. And that's one thing I don't think politicians are doing today. They're not happy people. They realise that they're being scrutinised for every mistake they're making. Personally, I don't think they're making any mistakes. I think politicians know exactly what they're doing, and they prey on the public to think they're doing a bad job. They know what they're doing most of the time. It is bullshit. It's really bullshit, and I think the world would be a better place without people dictating your life away. But yeah, totally agree. Politics is just... It's gone fucking mental today. Yeah, some fan-made games are pretty good. There's a couple of Super Mario Brothers fan-made games which were really good. What I've covered on the channel in the past, I think it was one of them was Mario and the Rainbow Stars. Absolutely amazing game. Probably better than what Nintendo's actually made. There's a hell of a lot of those type of arcade ports coming out nowadays. The Amiga, in particular, has got a hell of a lot coming out. Right, I really need to find my charger. So, literally, I was just playing on my Mega Drive just a minute ago, and I thought to myself, let's actually do another live stream because my microphone went earlier on. And yeah, I was playing some shoot 'em ups on my Mega Drive, and I thought, yeah, let's do a live stream again. Did anyone else have a few barricades open up round them just before? Looking forward to going. Barricades open up. Not sure about that. What you mean? Wonder Boy in... I think there was actually a Monster Land and a Monster World. I think those are two separate games. The Wonder Boy series is a bit all over the place, to be honest. I mean, originally, obviously, it started as just Wonder Boy, which was the pretty much running gun type game. And then it went a bit mental with RPG games and then straight scrolling shoot 'em ups. Hello, Gotik, how you doing? That's okay, Ice Crush, I don't mind. I do it just for fun, really. Hello, Inferno. Hello. Yeah, like I was saying, you probably know, you're probably aware from earlier on that my microphone stopped working, but obviously it's now working, and here I am with verbal diarrhea again. You pay a flat fee to go and play games for free. Yeah, I've not heard of that. So, yeah, but yeah, I'm going to be heading off in a minute. Like I said, it's literally pretty much just a little comeback, just to really apologise to anyone who was on the stream earlier on and I abruptly went. So, yeah. I felt like the stream wasn't actually done with at the time. Mega Man Unlimited. No, I've not heard of that one. I don't actually remember games selling those. I remember probably around 96, maybe 1997. It was Electronics Boutique, who had a chain around England at the time. He was selling off Atari Jaguars really cheap with the packing game Cybermorph. And yeah, I don't remember Mega Drives going that cheap because, well, obviously Mega Drive was a massive success in the time it wouldn't have flopped. That's really awesome. Fragger, you know, talking about a bit of BBC history there about capturing satellite images, there's actually a weird video on YouTube about it's a time traveller using a BBC micro. I can't think for the life of me of the YouTuber, but he's got a lot of subscribers, thousands, I think. And yeah, he did a little documentary on a BBC micro messaging the user. It was somewhere in England somewhere, and it was something to do with a cottage. Miniatures, I collect, well, I don't collect them much anymore because I'm buying computer bits and pieces nowadays, but yeah, I'm into painting miniatures, and I've been for years, but yeah, I don't do much of those at the moment. I've got other things on. 10 go to year 2007. And then you can add a 20... Hang on. You can't go to because you haven't put a command in first. So you could put... wouldn't it be... I can't think. Basic language. It's not something I use very often. 10 go to year 2007. Tyrannid Army, I played it once. I've actually got some of those myself. What I do in the recent past is, rather than buying lots of little Warhammer box sets, which nowadays probably range from 40 to even £70 for literally 5 or 6 miniatures, what I'll do is normally buy big box sets, And yeah, they seem very expensive, but the amount of plastic you get in, yeah, it's pretty good, I suppose. Okay. So, yeah, Ill Will, you certainly like your fan-made games. I can see that. Awesome stuff. You know what? The weird thing about Games Workshop is that you might think that they're going out of business nowadays because of the insanity of their prices, which makes absolutely no sense to anyone. But believe it or not, Games Workshop, I think this year alone, still in the best Games Workshop's ever done. And I can't think of a reason why that could be. I would have thought people are diverting from buying their models. So yeah, with Games Workshop, obviously, I think because they got so ridiculously expensive. And let's be honest, they weren't particularly cheap to begin with. Even when I started in the early 90s, they was always expensive. But today, in particular, it's like, come on, man, this is ridiculous. But there's lots of other third-party little smaller companies out there doing their own versions, and they're not as good as Games Workshop quality in terms of intricate detail, but if you're on a budget, then there is some other companies who's doing some pretty good miniatures, even some free 3D prints online. Some companies are giving away where, obviously Games Workshop aren't that nice to people giving away 3D models. Yeah, you know what? I remember the metal miniatures, and I'll be honest with you, plastic resin miniatures nowadays, so much more detail, like a ridiculous amount of detail, in comparison to the metal miniatures, which you can get back in the day. They were good at the time, but I'll say the plastic has so much more detail in them today. I think a lot of people sort of moan about, you're paying all this money for a bit of plastic, whereas the metal felt like you was actually getting something for your money, but yeah. I think the last metal Warhammer figure I bought was actually an Orc Warlord, and I think it was £10, and that must have been around 1995. It was literally just when the film GoldenEye was released on VHS. And yeah, around 1995 that was. And I remember I bought this metal miniature of the Orc Warlord. I got home and I thought I just spent £10 on this, and GoldenEye is just released on VHS. So I took it back to the shop and got my money back. It went to a local Sainsbury's and bought GoldenEye, and I was much more happier with that purchase. I don't remember if it was pewter or lead. I'm pretty sure it could have been lead, but I could be wrong. But I just call it metal, to be honest. Yeah, Double Dragon, awesome games. Let's see. There's actually a Double Dragon game in the process of coming out on Neo Geo. It's called Double Dragon 1. I was actually speaking to the developer beyond that game the other day, actually, over on itch.io. Uh, yeah, and let me show you, actually. It's called Double Dragon 1. And I'm pretty sure there's demos of the first stage on itch.io of that game. Yeah, here it is, Double Dragon 1. And here you go. So, it looks pretty cool. To be honest, I've not played this yet, but yeah, it looks pretty good. I love Double Dragon. And without a doubt, Double Dragon 2 on Nintendo NES is my favourite Double Dragon game. Just really cool stuff. And yeah, Double Dragon Reloaded. That's a fairly old game now. I played that a couple of years ago, I think it was. Yeah, there's loads of Double Dragon fan-made games coming out. Probably just as popular as what the Mortal Kombat games are. Yeah, yeah, I think they're really good. Well, the first two Double Dragon games on the NES were really good, and the third one, the Rosetta Stone, that was a little bit. It was okay. It was just extremely hard, and it was a lot different from the other two. Then obviously we had Double Dragon 4, which came out on the PS4 era, and it was a lot like Double Dragon 2 on the NES, and I think it got slated at the time. I actually bought it digitally at the time when Double Dragon 4 came out, and it was a bit forgettable, to be honest. It wasn't that great. RoboCop Rogue City, yeah. Yeah, I bought that near when it came out. A big Robo geek. I don't really play modern games much anymore, but I have played Rogue City, and yeah, it was pretty cool. And I learned a little while back there was some new DLC coming out for it. I'm not sure if it's DLC still or if it's going to be a standalone game. So yeah, Rosetta Stone, it was, yeah, it wasn't Double Dragon's strongest point. Even the arcades game of Double Dragon 3 wasn't, I don't think, particularly anything special. 9 quid, bargain. Yeah, like I was saying, I might have said this before. I'm a massive RoboCop fan. Of course, RoboCop, the first RoboCop, 1987, absolute amazing film. Everything about it. The second one is obviously known for RoboCop's armor looking very blue. Yeah, it was okay. The second RoboCop film, but it was a bit daft at the same time. Having that little kid is like some sort of like, I don't know, dealing with gangsters, that type of thing. Then the third RoboCop film, well, let's just forget about it because it really was crap. And so was RoboCop the series. That was pretty bad as well. And as for the RoboCop reboot film, well, that was just as bad as the Total Recall reboot, which was, well, just trash. Yeah, you know, a lot of people criticise the second RoboCop film, but I really don't think it's as bad as what people claim it is. It's certainly not the first RoboCop by any means, but I suppose it was good for what it was. I wouldn't say, yeah, it was the best RoboCop film, and that goes to the first one easily. It's just absolute legendary stuff. Predator 2, I've not watched Predator 2 in years, but I know it's got Danny Glover in it, who was in Lethal Weapon 1 to 4. I think I watched Predator 2 once, and I remember at the time it was pretty violent, like very violent. It's obviously based in a city. And I remember a neighbour of mine, another kid years ago, had the Mega Drive game of Predator. Yeah, Predator 2, it's one I keep meaning to watch. Again, you know, the days suddenly turn to years, and then we're 25 years on in. It's like, I've still not watched Predator 2 since I was a kid. And yeah, I really need to make the effort to watch that film again. Yeah, cool, Ill Will. That's awesome stuff. You really like your fan-made games. Awesome. Yeah, I think there's actually a sequel coming soon for Predator. I watched some of Prey. That was something to do with Native Americans, wasn't it? If it was Prey, the Native Americans film, it's almost like a prequel, I think, to Predator. I wasn't too keen on it, to be honest. Awesome, awesome. Okay. Yeah, yeah, like I said, I started watching it a little while back. I think it was on Amazon, possibly, and I wasn't too taken back on it. But to be fair, I've never been a massive Predator fan in the first place. I'm more of an Aliens fan, and I'm gonna pair those two together because Aliens and Predators, well, there's films of them together, so we'll say that. And you know, Aliens. To be honest with you, I know the latest Aliens film got a lot of praise, but I wasn't actually too blown away by the latest Aliens film. The Wicker Man with that Cage, Nicolas Cage in it. Yeah, I watched the Wicker Man remake when it came out. When was it? Must have been probably 2002, 2003. And at the time, I thought it was okay, nothing great. Only to find out years later, people was absolutely taking the piss out of Nicolas Cage with the cage thing on his head. And yeah, I think when I watched that, the remake, at the time, I didn't even realise it was a remake. I just thought it was a film, like an original film. But obviously, the original Wicker Man film was from the 70s, I think. But yeah, personally, I don't think the Wicker Man, the Nicolas Cage version, wasn't that bad. But people seem to have an issue with it these days. And yeah, obviously you got the Iron Maiden song Wicker Man, which well, that's a great song. Obviously, that's probably knowing Iron Maiden, that song is probably based on the film. So yeah, the Wicker Man, Iron Maiden. It was Bruce Dickinson's comeback around the year 2000. Painting figures, I've not painted any models for a little while. The one I'm actually painting at the moment is, if you can see this is from Legion's Imperialists. So if anyone here knows about Games Workshop history, in the 80s you had tiny little miniatures. That was known as Epic 40k. And then Games Workshop, being stupid, because that's what Games Workshop does, being stupid, they get a particular popular line and it sells well, they'll discontinue it for no reason whatsoever. Anyways, Legion's Imperialists came back, and it's pretty much like a epic thing all over again. Anyways, this is a War Master Titan, and yeah, I'm sort of I wouldn't even say quarter the way of painting this one. I'm a long way from painting this one. I just don't seem to have the time to paint much at the moment. Came Smash from the pub sometime in the late 90s. How it was on Channel 4. That's probably during Channel 4 back then. There was Film on 4, if you remember that era. You had some really awesome films on Channel 4 back then, on their Film on 4 program thing. A lot of classics. I remember the Shawshank Redemption was a part of that. Trainspotting, I'm pretty sure Trainspotting was, and Trainspotting's one of my all-time favourites. I love Trainspotting, what a great film. And yeah, Film on 4, yeah, quality stuff back then. But of course, that was a time when TV was fairly watchable. And today, in my opinion, I think TV is a shambles. But you get more quality stuff on YouTube than you do your mainstream TV channels today. So I think that's why a lot of people are going back to their nostalgia fix. And I think that's even happening with kids as well. It's like my own kid, he's into music, which I was into when it was new at the time, like Slipknot and Korn and Marilyn Manson. And I think it tells you a lot when kids of 13, 14 years old are listening to music from 20 years ago, if not almost 30 years ago now. It just tells me that today's music is bad. It must be, if kids are listening to these older people. I'm not sure. So yeah, this is a typical just Jamie live stream. I'm literally talking about anything really, and I don't know. I don't know. That's the way my live streams normally turn out. I start them with good intention of helping people with emulation if they're struggling. And then I go into talking about films and music and everything else. It's just, yeah, one of those things I do on live streams. Okie dokes, let's have a look. Okay, so I just popped in my PayPal address. If anyone wants to donate to help the channel, to support my channel, please feel free to make a donation there. I'm always eternally grateful for any donations. Really I am. So it's there. If you want to donate. No pressure. Okay, each wheel. Whoops, press the wrong button. Okie dokes. Yeah, sorry, Itch Wheel. I accidentally deleted your comment. It's just looking at some new functions. It turns out, since I last live stream up until earlier on today, a lot's changed with streaming. Yeah, I'm a guitarist myself, and to be honest, I don't really play guitar much anymore. But I've been in a few bands years ago, and every now and again I'll play. But the way I see it, I've sort of been there, done it. You know, I've sort of gone back to painting. You know, if I get a bit of spare time, yeah, painting, I suppose. But I don't really do that too often. I'm too busy researching and making videos for this channel, to be fair. But yeah, one of my favourite guitarists personally is John 5, and I think, how does a person add ISOs in teknoparrot? Skull's playlist, let me just tell you, I've covered teknoparrot tutorials on this channel, and you don't get ISOs for teknoparrot. It's a completely different thing. ISO is obviously just a disk image. So yeah, teknoparrot doesn't use ISO, so you might want to look at one of my teknoparrot guides to get you started on that, so you can get to know it a bit better. Yeah, John 5. So obviously, I didn't realise when he was with Marilyn Manson, when I seen Marilyn Manson live in the early 2000s, I didn't realise the actual true talent of John 5. Now, I'm a big Manson fan. I have been since I was, 15? But really, looking back on it, I think John 5 was wasted with Marilyn Manson. I mean, the skill that bloke has got is just incredible. Absolutely, John 5 is one of the most underrated guitarists around. You know, whenever people talk about guitar legends and great guitar players, you know, they always mention Slash, Jimi Hendrix, you know, all the obvious ones. But John 5 is never mentioned. It's like, why? This bloke is incredible. Yeah. Now, you obviously had Manson albums. You had Portrait, American Family, which was okay. What's that, 1994? And then you had that weird Smells Like Children EP, which had Sweet Dreams on it, and I Put a Spell on You. In then came the ultimate Manson album of all time, Antichrist Superstar. What a classic. Then you obviously had Mechanical Animals. Again, what a classic album, one of my favourites. And then it went on to... there's actually a live album before Hollywood came out, and that was The Last Tour on Earth. And at the time when The Last Tour on Earth came out, I bought it, and it came with a second CD, and it had, I'm pretty sure it's a Def Leppard cover, a Marilyn Manson Def Leppard cover, called Get My Rocks Off. Don't really hear that song by Manson anymore. No one ever talks about it. It's well and truly forgotten, but it's a good song. And you also had the astonishing panorama, The End Times, which was actually, the video to that song was on Celebrity Deathmatch. Astonishing panorama, The End Times, what a great song. Yeah, so you know, I'm a big David Bowie fan as well, and so Mechanical Animals by Manson is very much, well, it's the same thing, and it is what David Bowie was doing with the Alien scenario. Well, obviously Marilyn Manson's a big Bowie fan himself, and that's where Mechanical Animals came from, and same storyline as what David Bowie did, and it's only Marilyn Manson's character Omega, well, looked different. It looked a bit more questionable with his breasts and his look he had on the front cover of that album. Holywood, what a great album. Again, Holywood, I bought that one when it came out, and I was chuffed to bits. I actually had that album probably a week before it was officially released, so I was really chuffed with that. And then Andronymus, yeah, that's the word I'm trying to use. So yeah, you know, obviously David Bowie was doing all this in the 70s, and I suppose that would have been whack on Marilyn Manson's sort of youth during the 70s, or if not close enough. And yeah, David Bowie, awesome stuff, especially the 80s stuff. So yeah, Holywood was a really good album. Holywood was a lot like going back to Antichrist Superstar. It's got some incredible tracks on that one, some really good tracks. After Holywood came the Golden Age of Grotesque, which I think was probably the last best Manson album from recent. Oh, I wish I'd got to see the joint Bowie. That would have been pretty cool. And of course, during the 90s, you also had David Bowie in the Nine Inch Nails song, I'm Afraid of Americans, which was pretty good, and the video is pretty good to that one too. Yeah, I liked a bit of Nine Inch Nails. So I remember when the Fragile album came out by Nine Inch Nails, that must have been around 99. At the time, I was going out with somebody, and we was in London at the time, and I remember she bought the album, The Fragile, in HMV, I think it was. And at the time, I wasn't really a big fan of Nine Inch Nails because it wasn't very shouty, I suppose. Going back to Nine Inch Nails' earlier stuff from Pretty Hate Machine, then you got Heads Like a Hole, which is shouty. But I think come the Fragile era, it wasn't what I was really looking for at the time. So, yeah, The Fragile I thought was a good album. You know, I've learned to appreciate Nine Inch Nails more as I've got older. But yeah, there are some really interesting tracks on the Fragile album. There's a song there called La Mer, I think it's called. And yeah, very cool stuff. Sounds like the soundtrack to the film American Beauty. Downward Spiral, yeah, Downward Spiral, didn't the song March of the Pigs appear on Downward Spiral? That's a great song, that one. Really random, but yeah, very awesome song. And yeah, La Mer, that's the one, yeah. So yeah, really, I think it was around 2005, 2006ish. I got into the Nine Inch Nails. It was when their album With Teeth came out. Yeah, probably around 2005, 2006. And I really got into that album. And I thought, let's listen to more Nine Inch Nails. Hello, Cos. How you doing? And to be honest with you, Nine Inch Nails wise, I haven't really kept up to date with what Trent Reznor's up to nowadays. I'm sure he's still making Nine Inch Nails albums, just like Marilyn Manson is. And of course, I always put Marilyn Manson and Nine Inch Nails together because I suppose they sort of attract, or they once did attract, the same type of crowd. No, I don't think it was. Oh, really? I didn't realise, like I say, I didn't really keep up with Nine Inch Nails anymore. I know one of the Nine Inch Nails albums, I think it was Downward Spiral, I'm pretty sure that album was actually produced in the Sharon Tate house, the Charles Manson murder thing. But I could be wrong. I think it was the album Downward Spiral which was recorded in that house at the time. So, yeah, if you've not realised, yeah, a bit of a ex-metalhead, I suppose. Still a bit of a metalhead, but not like I used to. Oh, it's Pretty Hate Machine. Yeah, that song was, that album was very cool. Really cool stuff. Fresh install launchbox. Yeah, good luck with installing launchbox. I was using launchbox probably over a year back. I paid for the license for it for a year, I think it was. And yeah, it's good enough, but I think it was, I don't know, because every now and again I like to just play a game. I feel with launchbox, it wasn't that simple. Nowadays, I play it on my real hardware, but yeah, around a year ago, I don't know, retrobat probably a year ago was just easier to use for me. Not to say I can't use launchbox, I've covered it, it's tutorials, I just found, not sure what to say, but anyways, good luck with that one. But anyways, I'm going to be off, and I am going to be off. So again, if you was in the stream earlier on tonight when the stream ended, then I apologise. Like I said, that was microphone issues. But anyways, until next time, stay retro.